human mechanic fixed a wounded dragon's wing. Unaware, he just saved the Emperor. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The repair bay of Outpost 42 was dimly lit, save for the bright work lights that illuminated Derek Vaughn's weathered hands as they deftly maneuvered through the intricate machinery of a malfunctioning atmospheric regulator. Located on the farthest edge of human-controlled space, this remote station was where careers came to die, or where people like Derek came to escape their past. Almost got it, Derek muttered to himself, adjusting his protective goggles as he carefully removed a corroded power coupling. The outpost's equipment was ancient, a hodgepodge of salvaged parts and outdated technology that somehow kept the 50-person crew alive on this desolate moon orbiting a gas giant in the Epsilon Eridani system. At 43, Derek had the calloused hands and tired eyes of someone who had spent most of his life fixing things others had given up on. His dark hair was streaked with gray, and the creases around his eyes deepened whenever he concentrated on a particularly challenging repair job, which was most of the time on Outpost 42. The station's intercom crackled to life, interrupting his work. "Mechanic Vaughn to the command center, Priority 1," announced Commander Keller, her voice carrying an unusual edge of tension. Derek sighed, placing his tools down carefully. Priority 1 meant drop everything. In his 3 years at this outpost, he'd had exactly 2 Priority 1 calls, both times when the station's life support systems were failing. He quickly cleaned his hands on a rag that had once been white, but was now permanently stained with various mechanical fluids, and hurried toward the command center. When he arrived, he found the small room buzzing with more activity than he'd seen in months. Commander Keller, a stern woman with short-cropped gray hair and a perpetual frown, stood at the central console surrounded by the senior staff. "Vaughn, good," she said without preamble. "We've got a situation. Proximity sensors picked up an object entering our atmosphere about 20 minutes ago. It crash-landed 3 kilometers from the outpost." Derek raised an eyebrow. "Debris from the shipping lanes?" "Negative," responded Lieutenant Chun, the outpost sensor specialist. "It's organic. And it's alive." That got Derek's full attention. Their moon was barren. No indigenous life forms had ever been detected here. Alive? What? Like some kind of animal? Commander Keller's frown deepened. "Preliminary scans suggest it's draconian." A heavy silence fell over the command center. The Draconian Empire was the most powerful non-human civilization in this sector of the galaxy. They resembled Earth's mythical dragons in many ways. Massive, winged, reptilian beings with advanced technology and a complex hierarchical society. Relations between humans and Draconians were cordial but distant. The Empire viewed humans as an upstart species, barely worth acknowledging. "What's a Draconian doing here?" Derek asked. "We're nowhere near their territory." "That's what we need to find out," said Keller. "And why I called you. The creature appears to be injured. Its life signs are fluctuating. And since you're the closest thing we have to a medical specialist—" "Whoa," Derek interrupted, holding up his hands. "I fix machines, not aliens. Especially not Draconians." Commander Keller fixed him with a steely gaze. "You were a combat medic before you were a mechanic, Vaughn. It's in your file." Derek felt a chill run down his spine. He'd tried very hard to leave that part of his past behind. That was a long time ago. "Well, today it becomes relevant again," Keller said firmly. "We've already sent a communication to Draconian space, but it'll be at least 12 hours before they can dispatch anyone. In the meantime, we have a potentially dying Draconian on our doorstep. Helping it could improve diplomatic relations. Letting it die could create an interstellar incident." Derek knew when he was beaten. "Fine, but I'll need equipment." 30 minutes later, Derek was suited up in an environmental protection suit, bouncing along in the outpost's only rover as it navigated the moon's rocky terrain. Accompanying him were Security Chief Rivera and xenobiologist Dr. Emily Parker. "Any updates on the Draconian's condition?" Derek asked as the rover jolted over a particularly large rock. Dr. Parker, A petite woman with intelligent eyes and a perpetually curious expression checked her tablet. Life signs are stable but weak. The crash appears to have damaged one of its wings severely. Do we know why it was out here alone? Derek asked. Draconians usually travel in groups, don't they? Rivera, a muscular man with a permanent scowl, shrugged. Who knows why these aliens do anything? Maybe it got separated from its fleet. As they approached the crash site, Derek saw a long trench carved into the moon's surface, ending at a large, dark mass. The rover's headlights illuminated the scene as they drew closer, and Derek's breath caught in his throat. The Draconian was magnificent, even in its injured state. At least 7 meters long from snout to tail, with scales that shimmered with an iridescent blue-green hue even under the harsh artificial light. One massive wing was folded against its body, but the other was splayed out at an unnatural angle, clearly broken. Incredible, whispered Dr. Parker. I've never seen one this close before. Derek approached cautiously, medical kit in hand. The Draconian's eyes were closed, its breathing labored. As he got closer, the creature's eyes suddenly snapped open, vertical pupils contracting sharply in the bright light. They were a startling amber color, with an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. The Draconian let out a low, rumbling growl that Derek felt in his chest more than heard. It tried to raise its head, but winced in pain. Easy, Derek said, raising his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. We're here to help. To his surprise, the Draconian responded in perfect English, its voice deep and resonant. Human, where am I? You're on Lunar Outpost 42, orbiting Epsilon Eridani 4, Derek replied, trying to keep his voice calm despite his shock. You crashed. You're injured. The Draconian's eyes narrowed. I was attacked. Ambushed. It tried to move again and let out a sound that could only be described as a hiss of pain. Derek took a tentative step forward. Your wing is broken. I'm a mechanic, but I have some medical training. May I examine your injuries? The Draconian regarded him for a long moment, its ancient eyes calculating. Finally, it gave what appeared to be a nod. Proceed. But know that if you intend harm, even in my weakened state, I am capable of reducing you and your companions to ash. Noted, Derek said dryly. I'm just going to try to help with the pain first, then see what we can do about that wing. As Derek approached, he noticed something unusual about the Draconian scales. Around its neck and running down its spine were patterns that seemed almost like intricate tattoos or markings. He recalled reading somewhere that Draconians used such markings to denote social status. He turned to Dr. Parker. Can you scan these markings? Might give us some idea who we're dealing with. While she worked on that, Derek carefully examined the damaged wing. The Draconian anatomy was fascinating. The wing was a complex structure of bone, muscle, and a thin, leathery membrane reinforced with what looked almost like carbon fiber. But what truly caught his attention were the small metallic nodes embedded at key junctures throughout the wing. These are cybernetic, Derek muttered, his mechanic's curiosity piqued. Some kind of biomechanical interface. The Draconian's eyes swiveled to watch him. You are observant, human. The wings of my kind have been enhanced for space travel. The technology allows us to generate protective fields and navigate the void between stars. Derek whistled low. That's incredible engineering. The integration with your biological systems must be seamless. For the first time, the Draconian's expression changed slightly. Something almost like surprise flickered across its reptilian features. You understand such concepts? I'm a mechanic, Derek shrugged. Understanding how things work is my job. Dr. Parker suddenly gasped, drawing their attention. She was staring at her scanner with wide eyes. Derek, she said quietly. According to the database, these markings indicate this Draconian is part of the Imperial bloodline. Rivera immediately tensed, his hand moving to his sidearm. Are you saying we've got Draconian royalty here? The Draconian's eyes narrowed dangerously at the security chief's movement. I would advise against drawing your weapon, human. It would be the last mistake you ever make. Derek quickly raised his hands in a placating gesture. No one's drawing weapons. We're here to help, remember? He turned to the Draconian. I need to stabilize your wing before we move you. The broken sections need to be realigned and immobilized. It's going to hurt. The Draconian's expression remained impassive. Pain is merely information. Proceed. Derek worked methodically, drawing on his old combat medic training. The Draconian's anatomy was alien, but the principles of setting a break weren't so different. What was challenging was integrating his repair of the cybernetic components with the biological healing. These nodes, Derek said, pointing to the metallic implants. They're damaged, but I think I can reroute the energy flow to bypass the broken sections. It won't be perfect, but it should prevent further damage to your neural connections. The Draconian watched him with increasing interest. You understand the integration of biological and mechanical systems? Derek shrugged again. I've worked on prosthetics before. The principle isn't that different, just more advanced. He carefully manipulated a small tool to adjust one of the nodes. These remind me of the power distribution nodes in our atmospheric regulators, just miniaturized and a hell of a lot more sophisticated. Over the next 2 hours, Derek worked steadily, his hands moving with precision born from years of delicate repairs. He splinted the broken sections of wing bone using materials from the rover, then carefully rerouted and repaired the damaged cybernetic components. Throughout the process, he explained what he was doing in simple terms, as much to keep himself focused as to inform the Draconian. You speak to me as an equal, the Draconian observed during a pause in Derek's work. Most humans are either fearful or obsequious in the presence of my kind. Derek smiled wryly. No offense, but right now you're just another patient with a broken part that needs fixing, royal or not. To his surprise, the Draconian made a sound that might have been laughter, a rumbling, vibrating sound that Derek felt through his fingertips as they rested on the creature's scales. Refreshing honesty, a rare trait in any species. As Derek finished his repairs, Dr. Parker approached with her scanner. The Draconian fleet has responded to our communication. They're sending a ship, but it won't arrive for another 10 hours. The Draconian's eyes narrowed. 10 hours is unacceptable. I must return immediately. Well, unless you can fly with that wing, which I strongly advise against, you're stuck with us for now, Derek said, packing up his tools. I've done what I can, but you need proper medical attention. The Draconian's tail lashed in what Derek interpreted as frustration. You do not understand the urgency. There are political implications to my absence. Rivera, who had been maintaining a wary distance, snorted. Yeah, I bet. What's a royal Draconian doing out here alone anyway? Slumming it with the lesser species. Derek shot him a warning glance, but the damage was done. The Draconian's entire demeanor changed, its body tensing and a low growl emanating from deep within its chest. I was on a diplomatic mission, it said coldly. One that did not go as planned. Dr. Parker stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. Were you attacked because of your royal status? The Draconian was silent for a long moment. Perhaps, or perhaps because of the changes I seek to implement within the Empire. Before they could question further, the Draconian attempted to rise. Derek quickly moved to its side. Whoa, take it easy. I just patched you up, but those repairs won't hold if you start moving around too much. The Draconian settled back down, though Derek sensed it was more from pain than acquiescence. Human mechanic, what is your designation? Derek Vaughn. Derek Vaughn. The Draconian repeated, its pronunciation giving the simple name an almost musical quality. You have shown skill and respect where others might have shown fear or prejudice. This will be remembered. Something in the way it said those words sent a chill down Derek's spine. Before he could respond, their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from the outpost. Rivera, come in, Commander Keller's voice crackled through the security chief's comms unit. We've detected multiple ships entering the system. They're not broadcasting identification. Rivera's expression darkened. Pirates. Negative. Configuration suggests military vessels, but they're not Draconian or human. The Draconian's reaction was immediate and alarming. Its spine stood erect, and its pupils contracted to thin slits. Zerovian hunters. They have tracked me here. Zerovian. Dr. Parker's face paled. The separatist faction? Derek had heard rumors about the Zerovians, a splinter group that had broken away from the Draconian Empire generations ago, supposedly because they opposed any cooperation with other species, especially humans. They were said to be fanatical and brutal. "We need to get back to the outpost," Rivera said, already moving toward the rover. "Commander, how long before they arrive?" 30 minutes, maybe less. The Draconian's eyes fixed on Derek. "Human, your outpost cannot withstand a Zerovian attack. They will destroy it and everyone inside to reach me." "Then we don't go back to the outpost," Derek said decisively. "At least not all of us." He turned to Rivera and Dr. Parker. "You two head back. Tell Keller to begin evacuation procedures. Get everyone to the emergency shuttles." "What about you?" Dr. Parker asked. Derek looked at the Draconian. "I'll stay with our guest. Help him hide until his people arrive." Rivera scowled. "That's suicide, Vaughn." "Maybe, but it's better than leading the Zerovians straight to 50 innocent people." Derek's expression hardened. "Go. That's an order." After a moment of tense silence, Rivera nodded grudgingly. "You've got 12 hours of oxygen in that suit. Try to stay alive that long." He and Dr. Parker climbed into the rover and, with a last look back, drove toward the outpost. Derek turned to the Draconian. "We need to move. Can you walk?" The massive creature struggled to its feet, keeping its damaged wing tucked close to its body. "I can manage. But where do you propose we hide? This moon offers little cover." Derek pointed to a ridge of rocky formations in the distance. "There's a network of caves about 1 kilometer from here. The mineral content in the rocks should help mask your life signs from their scanners." The Draconian regarded him with those ancient amber eyes. "You would risk your life to protect a being you know nothing about." Derek shrugged. "I know you didn't ask to crash here. I know those Zerovians want to kill you. That's enough for now." They began their slow journey toward the caves, the Draconian moving with surprising grace despite its injury. As they walked, Derek found himself asking the question that had been nagging at him. "So, exactly how royal are you? Like, distant cousin to the throne, or?" The Draconian was silent for several steps before responding. "I am Thraxer, Emperor of the Seven Systems, ruler of the Draconian Empire, keeper of the eternal flame." There was no pride in the statement, just simple fact. Derek nearly tripped over his own feet. "You're the Emperor?" "The Emperor, indeed." Derek ran a hand over his face, the reality of his situation sinking in. "Great. Just great. I've got the most important Draconian in the galaxy limping next to me, and a bunch of fanatical separatists trying to kill us both." Thraxer made that rumbling sound again, definitely laughter. "You humans have a refreshing way of simplifying complex situations." "It's a gift," Derek muttered as they continued their trek toward what he hoped would be sanctuary. The caves loomed ahead, dark openings in the rock face like the maw of some great beast. As they drew closer, Derek could see that his memory had served him correctly. The cave system was extensive, with multiple entrances and narrow passages. "These will provide adequate concealment," Thraxer observed as they entered the largest opening. The temperature dropped noticeably as they moved deeper into the cave, and Derek switched on his suit lights to illuminate their path. "How's the wing holding up?" he asked, noticing that the Emperor's movements were becoming increasingly labored. "Your repairs are functional, if inelegant," Thraxer replied. "However, the strain of movement has aggravated the injury." Derek nodded. "We'll rest once we're deep enough inside." He checked his oxygen levels, still plenty left, but he'd need to be careful with his exertion. They continued in silence for several minutes, navigating the twisting passages until they reached a large chamber with a high ceiling. Crystals embedded in the walls caught Derek's light and reflected it, creating an ethereal glow throughout the space. "This should work," Derek said, setting down his pack. "Those crystals contain high concentrations of thorium. Should play havoc with their scanners." Thraxer lowered himself carefully to the ground, arranging his massive body so that his injured wing was protected. "Your knowledge of this terrain may have saved both our lives, Derek Vaughn." Derek busied himself with checking his equipment, uncomfortable with the Emperor's gratitude. Just trying to stay alive. Speaking of which, can you tell me more about these Zerovians? What are we up against? Thraxer's expression darkened. The Zerovians believe in draconian supremacy above all else. They view my policies of cooperation with other species, particularly humans, as a betrayal of our heritage. So they decided to assassinate you? Their intent was likely capture, not death. They wished to use me to legitimize their cause before eliminating me. Derek let out a low whistle. Political assassination and coup d'etat. Seems some things are universal across species. Thraxer's amber eyes studied him. You speak with the cynicism of one who has seen conflict firsthand. Derek tensed. I was a combat medic in the Mars Colonial War. Saw enough to last me several lifetimes. And yet you chose to become a mechanic on a remote outpost rather than return to your homeworld. Some memories are easier to outrun than others, Derek said quietly. Before Thraxer could respond, a distant rumble echoed through the cave system. Derek immediately doused his lights and activated his suit's thermal suppression. That sounded like ships entering the atmosphere. The Zerovians are here. Thraxer's scales rippled, the iridescent pattern shifting in what Derek assumed was the draconian equivalent of tension. They will have brought tracking drones and sentinels. Their technology is formidable. Then we stay quiet and hope your people get here first, Derek whispered, checking his communicator. No signal this deep in the caves. They were on their own. They sat in darkness, the only sound their breathing and the occasional drip of water from the cave ceiling. Derek found himself studying the Emperor in the dim light provided by the reflective crystals. Despite his injury, Thraxer exuded power and ancient wisdom. It was strange to think that this being, who could probably incinerate Derek with a single breath, was now dependent on a human mechanic for survival. You are wondering why the Emperor of the Draconian Empire would risk traveling alone on a diplomatic mission, Thraxer said suddenly, breaking the silence. Derek smiled wryly. Mind reading another draconian talent? Merely observation. Your species has expressive faces. Fair enough, Derek admitted. And yes, I am curious. Thraxer shifted slightly, his scales catching the faint light. I was meeting with representatives from the Terran Alliance. Unofficially, Derek's eyebrows rose in surprise. The Terran Alliance represented Earth and all its colonies. Why unofficially? Because there are elements within my court who share the Zerovians' views, if not their methods. They believe that closer ties with humanity would dilute our culture and weaken our position in the galactic hierarchy. And what do you believe? Thraxer was silent for a moment. I believe that isolation leads to stagnation. The Draconian Empire has existed for over 10,000 years. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. But your species, in just a few centuries, you have spread across your solar system and beyond. Your adaptability, your innovation, these are traits my people once possessed, but have forgotten in our long reign. Derek considered this. So you want an alliance with humans? I want my people to evolve rather than calcify, Thraxer said firmly. The future belongs to those who can adapt. The Zerovians and their sympathizers fear change because they fear losing power. Tale as old as time, Derek murmured. Their conversation was interrupted by a new sound, a high-pitched whine that echoed through the cave system. Derek tensed. Drones. Thraxer's head swiveled toward the cave entrance. They are using thermal and biometric scanners. The crystals will confuse their instruments, but not indefinitely. Derek's mind raced. They couldn't move deeper into the caves without risking getting lost, but staying put wasn't an option either. Then he had an idea. Your cybernetic nodes, they generate some kind of energy field, right? For space travel. Thraxer nodded. They create a protective barrier against radiation and micrometeorites. Could they be modified to create a broader field? Something that could mask both our signatures. The Emperor's eyes narrowed in thought. Theoretically, yes. But my wing is damaged, and I cannot access the primary control node. Derek reached for his toolkit. Show me. Maybe I can jury-rig something. Under Thraxer's instruction, Derek carefully accessed a panel-like section of scales near the base of the Emperor's neck, revealing an intricate network of crystalline filaments and metallic components unlike anything he'd ever seen. This technology, Derek breathed. It's incredible. It is ancient, Thraxer corrected. Developed over millennia of evolution and innovation. The control node you need to access is there. He indicated a glowing blue crystal embedded in what appeared to be living tissue. Derek swallowed hard. I'll need to recalibrate it. Redirect the field generation. But I could damage it permanently if I make a mistake. Then do not make a mistake, Derek Vaughn. Thraxer said simply. The whine of the drones was getting louder. Derek took a deep breath and began to work, his mechanic's hands moving with practiced precision despite the alien technology. He found himself drawing parallels between the draconian systems and the machines he worked with daily, different in composition but similar in function. This crystal, Derek said as he carefully adjusted connections, it's like a quantum processor and power source combined. The energy signature is like nothing I've ever seen. It is attuned to draconian physiology, Thraxer explained. Each is unique to the individual. Derek made one final adjustment. I think that should do it. When I activate this, it should create a bubble that masks our biosignatures. But it'll drain your energy reserves quickly. Proceed, Thraxer commanded. Derek connected the final circuit. Immediately, a shimmering field expanded outward from Thraxer's body, enveloping them both in what looked like heat distortion. The effect was subtle, not a visible shield, but a warping of the light and energy around them. The drone noises grew louder, then stopped just outside their chamber. Derek held his breath as the mechanical whine hovered at the entrance. After what seemed like an eternity, the sound began to fade as the drones moved on. It worked, Derek whispered, relief flooding through him. Thraxer inclined his massive head. Your understanding of the technology is impressive for a species so young. Thanks, I think, Derek replied, allowing himself a small smile. How long can you maintain this field? Not indefinitely. My reserves were already depleted from the crash. Derek nodded and checked his suit's chronometer. 7 more hours until your fleet arrives. We need to conserve your energy. He deactivated the field, and they settled into watchful waiting. The drones returned periodically, but never entered their chamber, suggesting that the thorium-rich crystals were indeed confusing their sensors as Derek had hoped. As they waited, Derek found himself engaged in a surprisingly candid conversation with the Emperor of the Draconian Empire. They discussed everything from the fundamental differences in their respective technologies to philosophical questions about the nature of progress. Your species seeks constant advancement, Thraxer observed. Always looking to improve, to change, to grow. It is both your greatest strength and your most significant vulnerability. And Draconians? Derek asked. We value stability, tradition, the wisdom of ages. But there is danger in looking only to the past. One can become trapped there. Derek nodded thoughtfully. Balance is key, I suppose. Respecting tradition while embracing innovation. Precisely, Thraxer rumbled approvingly. This is the vision I have been attempting to implement within the Empire, a vision the Zerovians and their allies vehemently oppose. Their philosophical discussion was abruptly cut short by a new sound, heavy footsteps echoing through the cave system. They've sent ground troops, Derek whispered, immediately dousing his lights again. Thraxer's scales rippled with tension. Activate the field again. Derek quickly re-engaged the modified shield as the footsteps grew closer. Unlike the drones, these were clearly bipedal beings, Zerovian soldiers armed and searching methodically. A beam of light swept across the chamber entrance, illuminating the crystal-studded walls. Derek and Thraxer remained perfectly still as two figures paused at the threshold. Through the distortion of the field, Derek could make out that they were Draconians, but smaller than Thraxer, with darker scales and elaborate armor. They spoke in their native tongue, a series of clicks, hisses, and rumbling sounds that Derek couldn't understand. After what seemed like an eternity, they moved on, continuing deeper into the cave system. Derek let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That was close. Thraxer's expression was grim. They will realize soon that their search pattern is inefficient. They will begin a more thorough examination of each chamber. Then we need to move, Derek said decisively. There's a secondary tunnel system that connects to these caves. If we can reach it, we might be able to circle back to the surface at a different point. Thraxer struggled to his feet, his injured wing still tucked close to his body. Lead the way, human mechanic. They moved cautiously through the dark passages, Derek using his suit's enhanced vision to navigate. The going was slow. Thraxer's massive form was not built for the narrow tunnels, and his injury made progress painful. After nearly an hour of careful movement, they reached a junction where the tunnel widened into another large chamber. Derek's suit sensors indicated that they were now moving upward toward the surface. We're making good progress, he whispered to Thraxer. Another kilometer, and we should reach an exit point far from their search area. The Emperor nodded, but Derek could see that the continuous movement was taking its toll. Thraxer's breathing had become labored, and there was a slight tremor in his limbs. Let's rest for a few minutes, Derek suggested, helping the Emperor lower himself to the cave floor. Thraxer did not object, which told Derek more than words how exhausted the Draconian truly was. As they sat in the darkness, Derek checked his oxygen levels, still sufficient, but getting lower. You said you were a combat medic, Thraxer said suddenly, his voice quieter than before. Why did you abandon that path? Derek was silent for a long moment. There was a battle on Phobos, a Martian separatist stronghold. My unit was sent in to extract civilians caught in the crossfire. We were ambushed. I had 23 patients and only enough medical supplies for half that number. He paused, the memories still painful even after all these years. I had to choose who lived and who died. I made those choices based on who had the best chance of survival. Textbook tree-off. By the books. And this haunts you. Derek nodded, forgetting for a moment that Thraxer might not recognize the human gesture. One of the soldiers I deemed too far gone was conscious. He looked me in the eye when I moved past him to help someone else. He understood what my decision meant. I'll never forget that look. Thraxer was silent for a moment. In the ancient wars of my species, before we achieved spaceflight, our healers faced similar dilemmas. There is a term in our language, krivish, which translates roughly as the burden of the life chooser. It is considered one of the heaviest responsibilities any being can bear. That's a good term for it, Derek said quietly. Yet you still chose to help others, to become a mechanic rather than abandon service altogether. Derek had never thought about it that way. I guess fixing things is simpler than fixing people. Machines don't look at you with betrayal when you can't save them. Perhaps, Thraxer rumbled. Or perhaps you merely exchanged one form of healing for another. Before Derek could respond, his suit sensors alerted him to movement in the tunnel behind them. The Zerovians had changed their search pattern and were heading their way. Time to move, Derek whispered urgently, helping Thraxer to his feet. They continued through the tunnel system with renewed urgency, the sounds of pursuit growing louder behind them. Derek's mind raced as he tried to recall the cave layout from his previous explorations of the moon's surface. There should be an exit just ahead, he said as they rounded a bend in the passage. But instead of the expected opening, they found a massive pile of rubble blocking their path. A cave-in. Damn it, Derek muttered. This wasn't here before. Must have been triggered by the vibrations from the ship landings. They were trapped, with Zerovian soldiers closing in behind them and no way forward. Derek looked around desperately for an alternative route, but the cave walls were solid. Thraxer's amber eyes glowed in the darkness. Activate the field again. It is our only option. Derek quickly re-engaged the modified shield, the shimmering distortion once again enveloping them both. They pressed themselves against the wall of the passage just as beams of light swept around the bend. 3 Zerovian soldiers appeared, moving cautiously, weapons raised. They wore sleek armor that accentuated their reptilian features, and their scales were a deeper, almost black color compared to Thraxer's iridescent blue-green. They spoke to each other in their native tongue, clearly frustrated by the blocked passage. One of them used a device to scan the area, sweeping it back and forth across the rubble and along the walls, directly over where Derek and Thraxer stood frozen. The scanner beeped, and the soldier frowned, adjusting its settings before scanning again. It passed over them once more, and this time the device emitted a shrill alarm. "They've detected us," Derek whispered. The soldiers immediately raised their weapons, pointing them directly at the seemingly empty space where Derek and Thraxer stood. One barked what was clearly in order. Thraxer straightened to his full height, the shield dropping as he faced his would-be captors. "I am Thraxer, Emperor of the Seven Systems. Lower your weapons." The Zerovians hesitated, clearly surprised to have found their quarry. Then the leader stepped forward, removing his helmet to reveal a face marked with ritualistic scars. The false emperor who would dilute our bloodlines by allying with human vermin. He spat in accented English, clearly for Derek's benefit. The true emperor who would ensure our civilization's continued evolution rather than its stagnation, Thraxer countered. "Stand down, Vexer. This path leads only to your destruction." The scarred Zerovian, Vexer, laughed harshly. "You are injured and cornered. The human cannot save you. Once we deliver you to our leadership, the true renaissance of draconian might will begin." Derek assessed their situation rapidly. 3 armed Zerovians blocking their only exit, Thraxer injured and weakened, and his own oxygen supply continuing to deplete. Not great odds. "Your revolution is built on fear and ignorance," Thraxer said, his voice carrying the weight of imperial authority despite his weakened state. "The Empire has thrived for millennia precisely because we adapted and evolved." Vexer snarled, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Adaptation is one thing. Subjugation to lesser species is another." His cold gaze shifted to Derek. "This human is evidence of your weakness. The great Emperor Thraxer, dependent on a primitive ape for survival." Derek felt a surge of anger, but kept his expression neutral. Getting emotional wouldn't help them escape this situation. "The Emperor was ambushed," he said calmly, "by cowards who couldn't face him at full strength. Seems like weakness to me." The insult hit its mark. Vexer's scales bristled, and he took a menacing step forward. "You dare speak to me, human? Your species is barely out of its evolutionary infancy. You should be groveling before superior beings, not standing alongside them." Derek noticed something as Vexer moved, a slight delay in the Zerovian's left leg, a barely perceptible limp. An old injury perhaps, or a flaw in the armor's joint system. He filed the observation away, looking for any advantage. "Enough talk," Vexer said, raising his weapon. "Restrain them both. The human will make a useful hostage." As the Zerovians moved forward, Derek whispered to Thraxer, "On my signal, activate your shield at full power, just for a second." Thraxer gave an almost imperceptible nod. The Zerovians were just 3 steps away when Derek shouted, "Now!" Thraxer activated the modified shield at maximum intensity. Instead of the subtle distortion field they had been using, a blinding pulse of energy exploded outward. The Zerovians staggered back, momentarily blinded, their weapons wavering. Derek seized the opportunity. He lunged forward, targeting Vexer's weak left leg. The Zerovian went down hard, his weapon clattering across the cave floor. Derek scooped it up and fired at the ceiling above the other 2 soldiers. The energy blast struck the unstable rock, sending a cascade of debris down on the Zerovians. "Come on," Derek shouted, grabbing Thraxer's foreleg and pulling him toward the now partially cleared passageway. They squeezed through the narrow opening created by the cave-in, the sounds of angry Zerovians fading behind them. "That was unexpectedly effective," Thraxer commented as they moved as quickly as his injury would allow. "Combat medics learn to improvise," Derek replied, checking the alien weapon he'd acquired. "This thing got a stun setting?" Thraxer glanced at it. "The lower nodule. Press twice." Derek adjusted the weapon as they continued through the twisting passages. His suit's navigation system indicated they were approaching another exit point, but he could also hear the sounds of pursuit resuming behind them. The Zerovians had recovered quickly. "Your people," Derek panted as they climbed a steep incline. How much longer until they arrive? Thraxer's breathing was labored, his massive form struggling with the narrow confines of the cave. 4 hours, perhaps less if they detected the Zerovian ships. Not soon enough, Derek muttered. They needed a better plan than just running. They emerged from the cave system onto the moon's surface at a point nearly 5 kilometers from the original crash site. The barren landscape offered little cover, but Derek could see a ridge of higher rocks about a kilometer away. There, he pointed. If we can reach those formations, we might be able to hold out until your reinforcements arrive. Thraxer nodded, but Derek could see the Emperor was fading. The energy expenditure from the shield pulse had drained his already depleted reserves, and the continuous movement had aggravated his wing injury. Fresh, iridescent fluid, draconian blood, seeped from between the splints Derek had applied. You need to rest, Derek said, concern evident in his voice. There is no time, Thraxer replied grimly. The Zerovians will be emerging from the caves momentarily. As if on cue, Derek's suit sensors detected movement at the cave entrance behind them. Too late. They're here. They increased their pace toward the ridge, but Thraxer was moving slower by the minute. Derek knew they wouldn't make it before the Zerovians caught up. They needed a diversion. An idea struck him, risky, but possibly their only option. Your Imperial Highness, Derek said, the formal address feeling strange on his tongue. How much control do you have over those cybernetic nodes? Thraxer's amber eyes focused on him. What are you thinking, human? Could you create a focused electromagnetic pulse? Something that would disrupt their communications and weapons systems without affecting my suit. Thraxer considered this. It is possible, but it would require redirecting all remaining power from my neural interfaces. I would be considerably weakened afterward. Weaker but alive is better than the alternative, Derek said grimly. After a moment's hesitation, Thraxer nodded. I will need to stop and concentrate. They took shelter behind a large boulder, the Zerovian pursuers now visible in the distance, their dark armor stark against the moon's pale surface. Thraxer closed his eyes, his entire body tensing as he accessed his internal systems. The cybernetic nodes along his damaged wing began to glow with increasing intensity, pulsing with an eerie blue light. Prepare yourself, the Emperor warned. The pulse will affect all electronic systems within a half-kilometer radius. Your suit may experience temporary disruptions. Derek nodded, bracing himself against the rock. Do it. The light from Thraxer's nodes flared blindingly bright, and then a wave of invisible energy rippled outward. Derek felt his suit systems flicker momentarily, life support faltering for a heart-stopping second before stabilizing. In the distance, he could see the Zerovians stumbling as their armor systems failed. It worked, he breathed. Come on, we need to move while they're disoriented. Thraxer attempted to rise, but collapsed immediately. The energy expenditure had been even more draining than anticipated. His massive body trembled with exhaustion, and his eyes had lost their bright amber glow, now dull and unfocused. I cannot. The Emperor began, his voice barely audible. Derek made a quick decision. Then I'll have to buy us some time. He checked the Zerovian weapon again, confirming it was set to stun. Stay here. Try to recover what strength you can. Before Thraxer could protest, Derek was moving, circling around to flank the Zerovians. Their armor systems were already beginning to reboot, but their coordination was still compromised. Derek counted 6 soldiers now. The original 3 had been joined by another team. He targeted the one furthest from the group first, firing the stun blast with precision born from his military training. The Zerovian dropped without a sound. Derek quickly moved to a new position as the others turned toward where the shot had come from. 1 down, 5 to go. He repeated the tactic twice more, taking advantage of the moon's low gravity to make impressive leaps between cover positions. Each time, the Zerovians would turn toward his previous location, only to be hit from an unexpected angle. But they were adapting quickly. After the 3rd soldier fell, the remaining 3 formed a defensive triangle, covering all approaches. Among them was Vexer, his scarred face contorted with rage. Show yourself, human, he bellowed. Face your death with whatever dignity your species can muster. Derek remained silent, assessing his options. He had managed to reduce the odds, but a direct confrontation would still be suicide. He needed to draw them away from Thraxer, give the Emperor time to recover. He took aim at the ground near the Zerovians and fired, creating a cloud of lunar dust. Then he sprinted across open ground toward a different section of the ridge, deliberately making himself visible. There, one of the soldiers shouted, and all three turned to pursue. Derek ran, pushing his suit's mobility systems to their limits. He could hear the whine of Zerovian weapons charging behind him, feel the heat of energy blasts passing too close for comfort. One grazed his suit's arm, scorching the outer layer but not penetrating to the environmental systems beneath. He reached the ridge and scrambled up the rocky incline, finding a narrow crevice to squeeze into. The Zerovians followed, spreading out to surround his position. Nowhere left to run. Human, Vexer called out, his voice carrying easily in the moon's thin atmosphere. Surrender now, and I may consider allowing you a quick death. Derek checked his oxygen levels, down to less than 4 hours. If he could keep the Zerovians occupied for long enough, Thraxer's fleet would arrive. But 4 hours was a long time to play cat and mouse. He was pondering his next move when his suit's comm system unexpectedly crackled to life. Derek. It was Emily Parker's voice, the xenobiologist from the outpost. Derek, are you there? He activated his comm, keeping his voice low. Emily, how are you reaching me? I thought I was out of range. Commander Keller boosted the signal. Listen, we've got a situation. The evacuation's been delayed, mechanical issues with the shuttles. Derek closed his eyes briefly. Just what they needed, more complications. How long until you can get everyone off station? That's just it, we're not leaving. The Draconian fleet made contact. They're less than an hour out, and they've ordered us to stand down and shelter in place. An hour? Derek repeated, hope surging through him. That's much sooner than expected. Apparently, they were already en route when the Emperor went missing. Derek, they're bringing a battle cruiser and fighter escorts. This is about to become a war zone. Derek's mind raced. 1 hour. He just needed to keep the Zerovians distracted for 1 more hour. Emily, I need you to do something for me. Can you access the emergency beacon network? Yes, but activate all the perimeter beacons simultaneously. Make it look like you're trying to signal for help. There was a pause as Emily caught on to his plan, creating a diversion. Got it. Give us 5 minutes. Derek ended the transmission and peered out from his hiding place. The Zerovians were methodically searching the ridge, moving closer to his position with each passing minute. He needed to stay hidden just a little longer. Exactly 5 minutes later, the night sky around the outpost lit up as dozens of emergency beacons activated simultaneously. The bright flares were visible even from several kilometers away, instantly drawing the Zerovians' attention. Reinforcements, Vexer hissed. The humans are signaling for help. He barked orders to his troops, pointing 2 toward the outpost while keeping the 3rd with him. It wasn't perfect, but Derek would take 2 against 1 odds over 3 against 1 any day. As the 2 Zerovians headed toward the outpost, Derek made his move. He emerged from his hiding place and fired at Vexer's companion, catching the soldier in the back with a stun blast. The Zerovian crumpled, leaving only Vexer standing. The scarred Zerovian spun around, his weapon raised. Finally, the human shows courage. Derek kept his own weapon trained on Vexer. It's over. The Draconian fleet will be here within the hour. Your revolution dies today. Vexer's scales rippled with what might have been amusement. You think this is about a single day or a single battle. The movement I represent has been growing for generations. The Emperor's capture or death would accelerate our cause, but it is not essential to it. Then why risk everything on this assassination attempt? Because symbols matter, Vexer snarled. Thraxer's progressive policies threaten the purity of our species. His willingness to treat with humans as equals diminishes our greatness. Derek shook his head. You've got it backward. True greatness comes from growth and adaptation. Isolation leads to stagnation. Pretty words from a primitive species, Vexer spat. What could humans possibly offer the Draconian Empire except dilution of our superior culture? A fresh perspective came a rumbling voice from behind Vexer. The vigor of youth. The hunger to improve rather than simply maintain. Vexer whirled to find Thraxer standing there, still weakened but upright, his amber eyes glowing with renewed intensity. The Emperor continued, I have watched humanity spread across their solar system in a mere few centuries, overcoming obstacles through innovation rather than brute force. They question, they explore, they adapt. These are qualities our empire once valued above all others, before we became complacent in our power. Vexer raised his weapon toward Thraxer. Treasonous philosophy. The council will. He never finished the sentence. Derek fired, the stun blast striking Vexer squarely in the chest. The Zerovian leader collapsed, his weapon discharging harmlessly into the lunar soil. Derek approached cautiously, kicking Vexer's weapon away before checking that he was truly incapacitated. That's enough revolution for one day, I think. Thraxer moved to Derek's side, his massive form casting a shadow in the dim lunar light. You fought well, Derek Vaughn. Few beings of any species would have shown such courage against Draconian warriors. Derek shrugged, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. Just trying to keep us both alive. Nevertheless, you have earned the gratitude of the Emperor of the Seven Systems. This is not a trivial thing. Before Derek could respond, the horizon lit up with multiple atmospheric entries, ships breaking through the thin lunar atmosphere with controlled precision. Unlike the Zerovian vessels, these were elegant, their hulls gleaming with the same iridescent quality as Thraxer's scales. Your ride's here, Derek said, relief evident in his voice. Thraxer's gaze remained fixed on Derek. Our association need not end here. Human. What do you mean? Your skills as both a mechanic and a strategist are impressive. Your understanding of Draconian technology, while incomplete, shows remarkable intuition. Such talents would be valued in the Imperial Court. Derek blinked in surprise. Are you offering me a job? I am offering you purpose, Thraxer corrected. A chance to contribute to something greater than a remote outpost on the edge of human space. To be part of the bridge between our species. Derek was silent, considering. For 3 years, he had hidden at Outpost 42, running from his past, and avoiding any responsibility that might force him to make life-or-death decisions again. And yet here, when faced with exactly such choices, he had acted decisively and effectively. The Draconian ships landed nearby, their engines kicking up clouds of lunar dust. Armored Draconian soldiers emerged, moving with military precision as they secured the area and approached their emperor with evident relief. I need to make sure my people at the outpost are safe first, Derek said. And those Zerovians you sent to investigate the beacons are still out there. Thraxer nodded. They will be dealt with. As for your outpost colleagues, they are already being evacuated to safety. Commander Keller has been in communication with my fleet admiral. One of the newly arrived Draconians approached, bowing deeply to Thraxer before speaking in their native tongue. The Emperor responded with what sounded like orders, gesturing toward the unconscious Vexer, and then to the ridge where the other stunned Zerovians lay. My guards will secure the prisoners, Thraxer explained to Derek. The Zerovians will face imperial justice for their treason. Derek nodded, then suddenly swayed on his feet, exhaustion finally catching up with him. One of the Draconian soldiers moved to support him, surprisingly gentle for a creature 3 times his size. You require rest and medical attention, Thraxer observed. My ship has facilities that can accommodate human physiology. Sounds good, Derek admitted. But I still haven't given you an answer about your offer. Thraxer's mouth curved in what Derek had come to recognize as the Draconian equivalent of a smile. There is time for such decisions. For now, let us leave this desolate place. The Imperial Guards formed a protective formation around them as they walked toward the largest of the landed ships. Its hull opened, revealing an interior that gleamed with the same advanced technology Derek had glimpsed in Thraxer's cybernetic implants. As they boarded, Derek found himself wondering what the Imperial Court would be like, what kinds of machines and technology he might encounter there. The prospect was both exciting and intimidating. But then, he reflected, so were most worthwhile endeavors. Once aboard, Derek was escorted to a medical bay unlike any he had ever seen. The equipment was clearly designed for draconian physiology, but the attending physician, a smaller draconian with paler scales and delicate movements, quickly adapted it for human use. "The Emperor has ordered that you receive our finest care," the physician explained in perfect English as Derek was helped onto an examination platform. "You have done our empire a great service today." "Just did what needed doing," Derek replied, wincing as the physician removed his environmental suit to examine a burn on his arm where the energy weapon had grazed him. "Such modesty," the Draconian commented. "The Emperor mentioned this trait of yours." As the physician worked, applying what looked like liquid crystal to Derek's wound, Derek found his gaze drawn to a viewport. Through it, he could see the moon's surface falling away as the ship ascended. Outpost 42, his home for 3 years, reduced to a tiny speck on a desolate landscape. There was a surprising lack of regret in that view. After his treatment, Derek was provided with clean clothing, clearly draconian in origin but modified for human proportions, and shown to comfortable quarters. He slept deeply for the first time in what felt like years, untroubled by the nightmares that had plagued him since Phobos. He was awakened by a chime, followed by the voice of a draconian attendant informing him that the Emperor requested his presence in the ship's command center. When Derek arrived, he found Thraxer standing before a massive view screen that showed the gas giant around which the moon orbited. The Emperor's injured wing had been properly treated, now encased in what appeared to be a living metal that shifted and adjusted with his movements. "Derek Vaughn," Thraxer greeted him, turning from the view. "I trust you found the accommodations satisfactory?" "Best sleep I've had in years," Derek admitted. "How's the wing?" "Healing well, thanks in no small part to your initial treatment. Our physicians were impressed by your improvisation with the limited tools available to you." Derek shrugged. "Like I said, I'm good with machines. Your cybernetic interfaces aren't so different from some of the systems I've worked with, just a lot more advanced." Thraxer gestured for Derek to join him at the view screen. "We will be rendezvousing with the main fleet shortly. From there, we return to the Imperial homeworld. I would have your decision before then." Derek took a deep breath. "About your offer. I've been hiding on that outpost for 3 years, running from responsibilities, from choices I didn't want to make again. But today showed me that running doesn't change who you are." "And who are you, Derek Vaughn?" "Someone who fixes things," Derek said simply. "Machines, people, situations. I can't seem to help myself. So yes, I'll accept your offer. I don't know what I can contribute to an empire as ancient and advanced as yours, but I'm willing to try." Thraxer's scales rippled with approval. "Excellent. There is much you can teach us about human innovation and adaptability, and much we can teach you about the synthesis of biological and mechanical systems. I do have one condition," Derek added. The Emperor's head tilted slightly. "Indeed. Commander Keller and the others from Outpost 42, they need to be taken care of. New assignments, not just dumped at some processing center." "Already arranged," Thraxer assured him. "Your commander has been offered a diplomatic position as the first official human liaison to the Draconian court. The others will be given options according to their skills and preferences." Derek nodded, relieved. "Thank you." The view screen shifted to show a formation of Draconian vessels ahead, dozens of ships arranged in a geometric pattern that was both militarily practical and aesthetically pleasing. At the center was a vessel that dwarfed even the considerable size of the Emperor's ship, the Imperial flagship, Derek presumed. "Your future awaits, Derek Vaughn," Thraxer said, gesturing to the fleet. "As does a new chapter in relations between our species." Derek smiled. "From mechanic to diplomat. Not exactly the career path I had in mind when I signed up for that remote outpost." "The universe rarely follows our expected paths," Thraxer observed. "That is what makes it interesting." As they approached the fleet, a communication officer approached and bowed to Thraxer. "Imperial Majesty, we are receiving transmissions from the High Council." They demand immediate confirmation of your safety and status. Thraxer's expression hardened slightly, no doubt with Counselor Drex leading the inquiries. Yes, Majesty. He specifically requests information on the human involvement in your rescue. Derek glanced at Thraxer. I take it this Counselor Drex isn't a fan of humans? Drex represents the conservative faction of the Council, those who share some of the Zerovians' concerns about interspecies cooperation, though not their methods, Thraxer explained. He will be challenging to convince. Politics, Derek sighed. Some things really are universal. Indeed. But now I have something I did not have before, living proof of the benefits of human ingenuity and courage. Thraxer turned to the communication officer. Inform the council that I will address them upon my return, with the human who saved their emperor at my side. The officer bowed and withdrew to relay the message. Derek raised an eyebrow. No pressure or anything. Thraxer made that rumbling sound that Derek now recognized as laughter. You faced Zerovian warriors with nothing but a stolen weapon and your wits. The Imperial Council should pose no challenge in comparison. I don't know about that, Derek said wryly. In my experience, politicians can be more dangerous than soldiers. Then we shall face that danger together, Thraxer declared. As the beginning of a new alliance between our peoples. As their ship docked with the Imperial flagship, Derek reflected on the strange turn his life had taken. 3 days ago, he had been a simple mechanic on a forgotten outpost, hiding from his past and expecting nothing from his future. Now he stood beside the Emperor of the Draconian Empire, about to become the first human to serve in the Imperial Court. All because he'd done what came naturally to him, fixing something that was broken. The flagship's docking bay was enormous, large enough to accommodate Thraxer's full wingspan once he was healed. A delegation awaited them, Draconian officials in elaborate ceremonial armor, their scales adorned with markings that Derek now understood indicated their rank and lineage. As the airlock opened, Thraxer paused. There is something you should know, Derek Vaughn, before we proceed. In the history of the Draconian Empire, spanning over 10 millennia, no other species has ever been granted the status I am about to bestow upon you. Derek looked up at the towering emperor. What status is that? Kivrash Tor, Thraxer said solemnly. Life Chooser of the Emperor. It is a sacred title, one that has not been used in 3,000 years. Derek swallowed hard. I just fixed your wing. You saved my life, my throne, and quite possibly prevented a civil war, Thraxer corrected. The title is well earned. It also places you under my direct protection. None may harm you without facing imperial justice. Before Derek could respond, Thraxer strode forward to meet the delegation, his regal bearing fully restored despite his injury. Derek followed, acutely aware of the stares from the assembled Draconians. One official stepped forward, taller than the others, with obsidian scales and elaborate gold markings. Imperial Majesty, we rejoice at your safe return. His gaze shifted to Derek, eyes narrowing. And this is the human? This is Derek Vaughn. Thraxer corrected, a subtle but important distinction. Kivrash Tor to the Emperor, an honored guest of the Imperial Court. A murmur rippled through the delegation at the title. The obsidian-scaled official, Counselor Drex, Derek presumed, looked as though he had swallowed something unpleasant. Kivrash Tor, Drex repeated, his tone carefully controlled. Majesty, surely such an ancient and sacred title is mine to bestow as I see fit, Thraxer interrupted, his voice carrying the full weight of imperial authority. Or do you question the Emperor's judgment, Counselor? Drex immediately bowed his head. Never, Imperial Majesty. I merely express surprise at such unprecedented honor for one so new to our customs. Then you will have opportunity to become better acquainted with both Derek Vaughn and human customs, Thraxer declared. As I intend to formalize an alliance with the Terran leadership once we return to the homeworld. This announcement caused an even greater stir among the delegation. Derek could see various reactions, shock, dismay, curiosity, and even some signs of approval from the younger officials. Drex composed himself quickly. The council will, of course, want to discuss the details of such an alliance. There are protocols, traditions, all of which can be adapted, as the Empire has always adapted to thrive, Thraxer said firmly. But those discussions are for another time. For now, we celebrate our victory over those who would divide us through fear and ignorance. The delegation parted as Thraxer moved forward, Derek at his side. As they proceeded through the flagship's massive corridors, Derek leaned slightly toward the Emperor. You know this alliance won't be easy, he said quietly. There will be resistance on both sides. Humans can be just as stubborn and fearful as Draconians. Of course, Thraxer agreed. Meaningful change never comes easily, but it begins with individuals willing to see beyond their preconceptions. Individuals like you, Derek Vaughn, who looked at a wounded Draconian and saw not an alien monster, but a patient in need of help. Derek smiled. Well, when you put it that way. They entered what was clearly a throne room, a vast chamber with a vaulted ceiling that reminded Derek of ancient Earth cathedrals. Draconian officials and nobles lined the path to a raised dais where an ornate structure that could only be the imperial throne stood. As Thraxer took his place on the throne, the assembled Draconians bowed deeply. Derek, unsure of the protocol, began to bow as well, but Thraxer stopped him with a gesture. Kivrashtor does not bow, the Emperor informed him. You stand at the right hand of the throne. Derek took the indicated position, feeling the weight of hundreds of Draconian eyes upon him. It was intimidating, certainly, but also strangely fitting. A new chapter was beginning, not just for him, but for human-Draconian relations. Let it be known throughout the 7 systems, Thraxer proclaimed, his voice echoing in the vast chamber, that the human Derek Vaughn is named Kivrashtor to the Emperor, honored advisor to the throne, and first ambassador of the human species to the Draconian Empire. The announcement was met with a moment of stunned silence, followed by the ritual response from the assembled court. The Emperor has spoken. So shall it be. Derek stood tall beside the throne, a simple mechanic who had found himself at the center of galactic politics through one act of compassion and skill. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, he faced that uncertainty without fear. He had fixed a wounded dragon's wing, unaware he was saving an emperor. Now he would help fix something even greater, the divide between 2 species destined to achieve more together than they ever could apart. As the formal ceremonies concluded and the court began to disperse, Thraxer turned to Derek with that now familiar reptilian smile. You seem pensive, Kivrashtor. Just thinking about how small choices can have enormous consequences, Derek replied. If Commander Keller hadn't known about my combat medic background, if you'd crashed a few kilometers farther away, if I'd decided to evacuate with the others. The universe unfolds as it must, Thraxer said philosophically. But I prefer to believe that beings of good character tend to make choices that align with the greater good, whether they realize it at the time or not. Derek nodded thoughtfully. I hope so, because we've got a lot of work ahead of us. Indeed we do, the Emperor agreed. But for now, rest. Tomorrow, we begin reshaping the future of our civilizations. As Derek was escorted to his new quarters in the Imperial residence section of the flagship, he found himself smiling. From a remote outpost at the edge of human space to the center of the Draconian Empire, all because he did what he did best, fixing what was broken. Sometimes, it seemed, the universe had a sense of humor. And sometimes, it had a plan. 6 months later, Derek stood on the observation deck of the Draconian Imperial Palace, gazing out at the spectacular triple sunset of the Draconian homeworld. The massive gas giant around which the planet orbited filled half the sky, its swirling storms creating patterns of amber and gold that complemented the red-orange glow of the setting suns. Still not tired of the view? Came a familiar voice behind him. Derek turned to see Emily Parker, formerly xenobiologist of Outpost 42, now part of the growing human diplomatic contingent on the Draconian homeworld. I don't think I ever will be, he admitted. 3 suns, a gas giant that makes Jupiter look like a marble, and a city that makes our tallest skyscrapers look like Lego blocks. It's a lot to take in. Emily joined him at the viewport. The medical exchange program is officially approved. 20 Draconian physicians will begin training at Terran Medical Academy next month, and 15 human doctors will join the Imperial Medical Corps for advanced study. Derek nodded approvingly. Thoraxer will be pleased. He's been pushing hard for practical exchanges, not just symbolic ones. How are the repairs on his wing progressing? Almost complete, Derek said with professional pride. The integration of human regenerative techniques with draconian cybernetics has been more successful than either side anticipated. The Emperor should have full flight capability within weeks. And Counselor Drex? Still giving you trouble? Derek chuckled. Daily. But I think he's starting to come around. Yesterday, he actually asked my opinion on modernizing their atmospheric processors. Didn't take my suggestion, but the fact that he asked at all is progress. And the Zerovians? The trials concluded last week. Vexer and the leadership will spend the rest of their lives in Imperial containment. The rank and file have been offered rehabilitation and reintegration. Some have accepted, others haven't. But the movement has lost momentum since Thoraxer's reforms have shown positive results. Emily nodded thoughtfully. It's amazing how much has changed in 6 months. A year ago, most humans thought of Draconians as distant, arrogant aliens who barely acknowledged our existence. And most Draconians thought of humans as primitive upstarts barely worth noticing, Derek added. Perceptions change when you work together. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a Draconian attendant who bowed respectfully to Derek. Kivrashtor, the Emperor requests your presence in the engineering nexus. The test of the new interspecies interface is about to begin. Derek nodded. Tell him I'm on my way. As the attendant departed, he turned back to Emily. Duty calls. The new navigation system we've been developing, combination of Draconian field technology and human intuitive interfaces, could revolutionize space travel for both our species. Emily smiled. Go. Change the future. It's what you do best. As Derek made his way through the soaring corridors of the Imperial Palace, passing Draconians and the occasional human diplomat or specialist, he reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. From a mechanic hiding from his past to the right hand of an emperor, instrumental in forging an alliance between two civilizations. All because he'd done what came naturally to him, fixing what was broken, whether it was a wing, a relationship, or the gap between two species. In the engineering nexus, he found Thoraxer waiting, the Emperor's wing now almost fully healed, the cybernetic components gleaming with new enhancements that Derek had helped design. Ah, Kivrashtor, excellent timing, Thoraxer greeted him. The final calibrations are complete. Derek took his place at the control interface, a hybrid of draconian crystalline technology and human ergonomic design. Ready when you are, Your Majesty. As they began the test sequence, human and draconian engineers working side by side, Derek couldn't help but smile. This was where he belonged, not hiding from responsibility, but embracing it. Using his skills to build bridges rather than walls, to create rather than merely maintain. The interface came to life under his hands, responding perfectly to his commands, the culmination of months of collaboration between two species that had once viewed each other with suspicion and indifference. Perfect integration, Thoraxer observed, his amber eyes bright with satisfaction. As I have come to expect from our partnership. Derek nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment that went beyond mere professional pride. That's what happens when you combine the wisdom of an ancient civilization with the innovation of a younger one. The whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. A principle, Thoraxer said with that now familiar rumbling laugh, that applies to more than just technology. Derek couldn't agree more. The universe had a strange sense of humor indeed, and sometimes its jokes turned out to be the beginning of something extraordinary. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.